because at the end of the day, America is going to want a president who is a decent human being, who doesn't on other people, who has some interest in the American people, some interest in something beyond himself. I think at the end of the day, people are going to reject this bigoted, divisive figure.
Giving you the answer to the question you're asking all night long. Why do they vote for Donald Trump? It's not always because they like him. No. It's because stuff like that is kookier.
Bill Maher just unleashed a brutal takedown on Adam Schiff, savagely roasting the California senator over his relentless crusade against Donald Trump. The takedown was so fierce, it wouldn't be surprising if Schiff never returned to Maher's show. If you're into bold, unfiltered commentary like this, hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss out.
I think it's true justice. The only thing he cares about is himself and money, and going after the money is a way to bring about some real...
Adam Schiff kicked off the evening with his trademark barrage of attacks on Donald Trump, painting him as a self-absorbed narcissist who, in Schiff's words, cared for nothing and no one but himself. He doubled down, claiming Trump was clearly guilty of the many accusations against him and declaring him utterly unfit to lead the nation. With dramatic flair, Schiff warned that Trump's return to power would be a catastrophic blow to democracy. It was classic Schiff. Plenty of accusations, little evidence, and a heavy dose of political theater. But the real shock came later when he made a bold statement that may come back to haunt him in ways he didn't anticipate.
I don't share your pessimism about this or your pessimism about the general election. The reason why Joe Biden is going to beat Donald Trump is because at the end of the day, America is going to want a president who is a decent human being, who doesn't on other people, who has some interest in the American people, some interest in something beyond himself. I think at the end of the day, people are going to reject this bigoted, divisive thing.
Schiff continued his tirade against Donald Trump, throwing out every insult he could muster in a desperate effort to discredit him. But the moment likely haunting Schiff most now is his bold prediction that Joe Biden would easily win the election. Fast forward to today. Donald Trump is back in the White House, and Schiff's confident forecast has spectacularly backfired. His boasts have aged like milk, leaving him looking foolish and scrambling for excuses. It's a textbook example of political karma unfolding in real time, and watching it has been nothing short satisfying. Meanwhile, Schiff's rant was clearly wearing thin on both Bill Maher and Stephen A. Smith. Maher kept his composure, barely, but Stephen couldn't resist firing back.
I'm just getting tired of seeing so much stuff targeted in his direction, but somehow, some way he still survives. I mean, we're talking about a situation where he's still going to be the GOP nominee. He's still going to be running for president. You're President Biden. That's the individual that you're going to have to beat. 4 indictments, 91 counts. They ain't even bringing up the bankruptcies, ain't even bringing up this particular issue with this civil case. And somehow, some way, he puts cats to shame because he clearly has more than 9 lives.
Before Bill Maher even hits the stage, Stephen A. Smith storms in, gloves off and unfiltered. He doesn't hold back, tearing into Adam Schiff and his political allies for their relentless, years-long crusade to take down Donald Trump. From media smear campaigns to endless investigations and dramatic comparisons to history's darkest figures, they've thrown everything at Trump, calling him Hitler, branding him a threat to democracy, and blaming him for nearly every national woe. Yet despite it all, Trump hasn't just survived, he's thrived. Against every prediction, he's louder, bolder, and more unshakable than ever. Trump has become the political enigma Democrats and their media partners can't seem to crack. Every time they think they've won, he comes back swinging even harder. Love him or hate him, one thing is undeniable. He's their unsolvable riddle, and it's driving them mad. Tired of the endless anti-Trump theatrics, Bill Maher finally steps in, and what follows is pure, unfiltered chaos.
Atlantic put out an article last year, and it was called Separating Sports by Doesn't Make Sense.
Right.
And talked about how we separate sports like the WNBA and just because it's just socialization. This is insane.
I agree.
Okay. That's why people vote for Trump. Mm-hmm. Because there's stuff like that on the left that people just go, I know Trump's horrible, but separating by sports makes perfect sense. Mm-hmm. And if you think it doesn't, you can't leave.
Maher didn't waste a second getting straight to the point, delivering a blunt reality check to Adam Schiff. In clear, unapologetic terms, he explained why so many Americans keep pulling the lever for Donald Trump. No filters, no fluff. Maher called out the Democrats for pushing hollow policies, clinging to out-of-touch ideologies, and drifting further from the real concerns of everyday people. That disconnect, he argued, is exactly what fuels Trump's growing momentum. He pointed to one glaring example: the Democrats' push to erase biological distinctions in sports by insisting men and women compete on the same playing field. For many Americans, this wasn't just political noise. It was an insult to basic common sense. But instead of listening to the backlash, Democrats doubled down, brushing off valid concerns as bigotry and charging ahead. Maher made it clear: this kind of ideological overreach doesn't inspire, it alienates. It doesn't bring people in, it drives them away. And in doing so, it hands Trump a political gift. Because when voters are forced to choose between chaos and someone who, at the very least, seems rooted in reality, they'll choose reality.
Take the opposite view. I don't think he should have given the pardons at all.
Really?
No, I don't think he should have, and I was vocal about that at the time.
Can you refuse a pardon?
That's less clear because in the case of the January 6th committee, he pardoned essentially the whole committee.
Did Senator Adam Schiff just throw President Biden under the bus? Because it sure sounded that way. Schiff, a key figure on the infamous January 6th committee, was quietly handed a pardon, along with others involved in the panel that spent months assigning blame and declaring guilt over the Capitol riot. But here's the twist. If everything the committee did was fully justified and above board, why did Biden feel the need to issue preemptive pardons in the first place? Now, Schiff is out here downplaying the pardon like it was unnecessary, subtly implying Biden may have acted too soon, without directly saying it, of course. Still, the message lands loud and clear. In an attempt to protect himself from political fallout, Schiff ends up casting doubt on the very president who just gave him cover. It's classic DC double-dealing: accept the protection when it's convenient, then pretend it didn't happen when things start to heat up. Schiff may think he's walking a careful line, but the cracks are showing. And you can bet the Biden camp isn't thrilled with the optics. Bill Maher doesn't let it slide either. He calls Schiff out and takes a sharp jab at the mainstream media for, once again, choosing sides.
And arrested the judge. No, I haven't heard that. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think I've ever read arrested a judge. So is this significant?
Well, I think
I'm not going to comment on something I don't know more about than what you've just told me.
You read about it too.
Yeah, I mean, I read about it, but I don't know.
So you don't trust anything either, and you work for the New York Times.
Even Bret Stephens, yes, a columnist at Asterisk, the New York Times Asterisk, can't bring himself to fully trust his own paper's reporting. Let that sink in. When someone inside the newsroom starts casting doubt on the headlines written by his own colleagues, it's a sign that the rot runs deep. And that, right there, is a big reason why Donald Trump and millions of Americans have turned their backs on legacy media in search of something more honest, something real. It feels like nearly every major news outlet in the US has been hijacked, especially by the political left. Once respected institutions that were meant to hold power accountable now often seem more interested in towing the party line than uncovering the truth. It's a tough pill to swallow. Journalism, once a cornerstone of democracy, has increasingly become a stage for partisan theatrics. And with every misstep, another illusion crumbles. For many, it only confirms what they've long suspected. If you really want the truth, you won't find it in the carefully curated echo chambers of the establishment. You'll have
Catholics are popular now, even with people who aren't Catholic. It's the last place you can send your kid to get an old school education. And they just tell the kids, forget about the Jesus stuff. Just, to them, that's okay indoctrination, as opposed to some of the other indoctrination that goes on. And also, the Catholics don't put up with bull. They take your phone. You have to learn your P's and Q's and your grammar and all this kind of stuff. And that's what I just don't understand. That parents don't have the whip hand anymore. Not that you should actually use it.
We all remember when things truly began to unravel, when the Democrats went all in on woke ideology, tossing aside morality and basic common sense. That's when the cultural fabric began to tear. Suddenly, children were elevated to near-adult status, while parents, especially fathers, were cast as clueless, outdated relics of a forgotten era. Just turn on any family sitcom from the last decade, and the pattern is impossible to ignore. The bumbling dad, the semi-capable mom, and the all-knowing, sarcastic kid who somehow ends up schooling them both. What began as lighthearted humor slowly transformed into something else entirely, a not-so-subtle message. entertainment gave way to indoctrination, and the consequences were real. A generation grew up believing that rules are optional, respect is old-fashioned, and consequences are negotiable. Discipline became taboo. Boundaries blurred. The family unit, once the moral foundation of society, was pushed aside in favor of virtue signaling and performative progressivism. Now, we're living in the aftermath, and it's cost the Democrats dearly. The loss of the 2024 election didn't come out of nowhere. It was the result of years of cultural missteps. Even one of their own admitted it in the run-up.
Respect the fact that you don't share my pessimism. I truly do. I understand where you're coming from. But I think that's part of the problem. I think the Democratic Party should share my pessimism. I think they should be on high alert. I think they need to treat him with the seriousness that it deserves, because you're having a lot of faith in the American people. The man did get over 74 million votes. You've got people that are looking at Joe Biden. I'm not going to call him a cognitive mess or anything like that. That's very disrespectful. I would never speak about our president that way. But when you're 82 years of age, it's not offensive to say you're no longer a spring chicken and you don't.
Beyond their extreme ideologies, Adam Schiff and his allies spent years pushing the narrative that Joe Biden was mentally sharp enough to lead the nation. Despite growing bipartisan concerns and increasingly obvious signs of cognitive decline, they stuck to the script, deflecting, denying, and dismissing the obvious. They told Americans not to worry, but we should have. By the time reality broke through the media spin, the damage was already done. Biden wasn't the capable leader they promised, and the party knew it. Cue the scramble, their solution. Kamala Harris. In a last-ditch attempt to salvage credibility, they propped her up, only to watch it backfire spectacularly. Her approval ratings plummeted, her public appearances became late-night punchlines, and any hope she'd offer strong leadership only added to the chaos. The so-called party of strategy suddenly had no plan. What's left is a political mess of their own making, from embracing fringe ideologies and abandoning common sense to backing a president unfit for the moment and doubling down with a vice president who couldn't deliver. In doing so, they alienated the very voters they once depended on. The frustration voiced by Bill Maher and Stephen A. Smith speaks to something larger. Americans are tired of the gaslighting, the stage-managed optics, and the endless blame games. Trump's staying power isn't just about him. It reflects a nation sick of being missiled. The left tried to control the narrative, but the truth has a way of cutting through the noise. Now, even voices within their own ranks are starting to question what they once blindly defended. That's it for today's video. If this message resonated with you, hit that like button, subscribe, and stay tuned for more straight talk. Thanks for watching. See you next time.